Welcome back to Monkey Suit Science. Today we're going to talk about a different kind of science than our usual type. We're going to talk about the science of second language acquisition, SLA. We'll first discuss the defining metaphor of this SLA project, that second language acquisition is a journey rather than a destination. This means there's no end to the road of language learning. When you learn to swing a hammer to drive a nail into lumber, you know, you're done learning. Forever and ever, you will maintain the knowledge of how to do this. You've learned the skill and there's not more that you have to learn. Second language acquisition, on the other hand, is not the same. You cannot reach the end of the road. This is perhaps the most difficult part of second language learning for many people. Second languages are only studied by those who do so by necessity, or those who find within themselves a drive to undertake this never-ending challenge. As I said, the road is often difficult, and it never ends, but it is a road with many rewards. As we look at the process of acquiring a second language, we will examine many of the texts from the second language acquisition course, as well as the theories of two of the most important linguistic theorists in modern times, Stephen Krashen and Noam Chomsky. Their theories will be examined along with the material that I've taken over the length and breadth of this training. By the end, you will clearly see why the process of language learning is a journey rather than a destination that can be reached. As we move forward on our language learning path, we must ask ourselves a question: how is a new language acquired or learned in my educational context? According to Chomsky, the process is based on an innate ability to learn languages that is found within all humans. Chomsky believes that language is an innate faculty. That is to say, we're born with a set of rules about language in our minds, which he refers to as universal grammar. In this theory, Chomsky states all humans have some innate ability to acquire languages based upon the input that they receive from the people around them. Chomsky additionally stated that children do not simply copy the language they hear around them, they deduce rules from it, which they can then use to produce sentences that they have never heard before. This type of pattern recognition, and Chomsky's theory that espouses it, are supported in fact and practice by data from the U.S. military, which used a specifically designed aptitude test to determine whether candidates have the mental capacity to learn second languages. The test is so detailed that it can not only determine which persons are able to learn languages more easily than others, but as to which level they are likely to be successful. Krashen, on the other hand, looks at the process of second language acquisition through the lens of 5 major hypotheses. These are called acquisition learning, monitor, input, effective filter, and natural order hypothesis. We'll look at these through the lens of Krashen's and Chomsky's ideas as we move forward in our second language journey. What are the processes or components of proficiency in a new language? Is a question that is often asked in the quest for second language. As this language is often English, which happens to be the most spoken language in the world, even though most of its speakers know it as a second language, it is pertinent to the practitioner of teaching English as a second language to understand the relationship between the L1 or home language and the L2 or second language. Is one or the second is often supplemented by the first. Contrary to the belief of many who believe that their children should acquire English as the language of success and prosperity, the maintenance of the original language is not a hindrance to the acquisition of English. In fact, teaching students to read in their L1 or native language improves their ability to improve their skills in the reading of English language texts. This goes hand in hand with a scaffolding technique that is often discussed in the readings, namely the academic skills in language, when practiced in conjunction with familiar content, can be an excellent strategy to help new students to obtain the skills they need in order to achieve academic success. To this end, it is also helpful to obtain the assistance or buy-in of the family of the English learner student. One of the ways that the open communication between parents and teacher can be maintained is through the use of an open door policy that allows and encourages parents and other family members to feel free to visit the classroom whenever they want. I say again, what are the processes or components of proficiency in a new language? These are addressed by Krashen and Chomsky. Chomsky tells us that the brain is already set up to acquire languages. The supposition is in keeping with an organization that has a great deal of experience at training men and women to speak L2s, some of which are far different than the base language. Base language is always considered to be English in this case, and the test is administered with English as the base language, even though there are not insignificant number of members in the military who have an L1 that is not English. The test is called the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, and has shown itself to be accurate in predicting who can and cannot learn a foreign language. And the test can also say specifically whether the candidate will be able to be successful in a language that is considered to be more difficult for native English speakers. The test is an examination of the ability of the subject to recognize patterns and thus to decipher a new language. This includes the main recognized components of language proficiency, including reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Listening refers to listening in a way whereby the listener is able to decipher and understand spoken language. Of course, these skills and the tests for them can sometimes be subjective, like the story of a Marine who used to pass the speaking portion of the exam by telling the same story repeatedly. What conditions are necessary and beneficial for second language learning and acquisition? In my educational context, Krashen goes more in depth in his work to describe the answer to this question than Chomsky does. Krashen's theory is divided into 5 separate sections. However, we're only going to cover the most important 2 of them in this presentation. The first one of those is the acquisition and learning distinction. According to Krashen, extant in our world is an acquired system of language learning, and a learned system are the same. The acquired one is, in short, the one that comes from meaningful interactions in which the speakers concentrate on the utterances and, ultimately, the act of communication. The learned version is the boring one, where the learner focuses on grammar rules like conjugation, verb tenses, and even lists of vocabulary. If any of my students of Spanish as an L2 or foreign language are watching this, they will recognize much of our classes in the work that we're doing here. On the other hand, the English language learners with whom I work will find that it seems we are focused solely on the communicative act, with the use of grammar entering into our learning sessions as only supplementary to our acquisition work. These students have plenty of time with their regular English teachers, what we call ELA or English language arts, to focus on grammar. The other important, and in my regard, the most important of Krashen's several hypotheses, is this hypothesis of the affective filter. In short, this filter says that there are many factors that facilitate the learning of a new language. Students who have good self-esteem, are willing to take risks, and don't easily succumb to anxiety make good learners of second languages. Conversely, the students who suffer from depression, anxiety, or low self-esteem will face significant barriers that other students will not. Furthermore, this hypothesis also seems to take into account occurrences like life events. A student of an L2 or second language will likely find himself distracted by the birth of a new child, family hardship, new employment, changing residences, or a myriad of other events that can take place that will take away the attention of the language learner and refocus it on something besides learning the language. This is apparent in the English language learners in the school setting. They are more motivated when they are happy, well-rested, and not dealing with stress from home. On the other hand, when they're tired, unhappy about something, or dealing with stressors in their home life, they are less well equipped to continue their journey to master the English language. How can the learning environment be shaped to support successful acquisition of a new language? In accordance with the hypotheses of Chomsky and Krashen and the evidence from the U.S. military, the student is already equipped to acquire a second language. In order to support the successful acquisition of a second language, the learning facilitator, sometimes called the teacher, has a dual task of providing comprehensible input to the students and making sure that the educational environment is a comfortable, safe, and happy one. Furthermore, the teacher must be prepared to ensure that students who do come in with anxiety, low self-esteem, or residual effects of family issues are met with a positive environment that can help them work past this and become able to continue in their language acquisition journey. Speaking of language acquisition journeys, let's go outside and take a look at ours. I will ask you to put on your metaphorical language hat, as we will be using metaphor and thus imagination to look at our model. Welcome to the Spokane R7 School District buildings. I'm about to step onto my metaphorical road of language acquisitions. As I step onto this road, I begin on the journey of language learning. And I move forward. As I move forward in this language learning journey, sometimes I have to stop. Sometimes I have to stop because I've got issues in my life going on. Sometimes I just don't have time to study. Sometimes I have to move off to the side because something happens. For instance, a car comes along. This car could represent any of the stressors in my life that caused me to change my path briefly. Once they're gone, I can get back on my path and continue to move forward. Sometimes I'm really motivated and I even start running. I move language really quickly. Sometimes it gets slow. Sometimes I get distracted and I go look at the trees. And this really takes away from my language journey. But the bottom line is, as I move on down the road, I never get to stop.